Okay, so I've heard multiple times now this analogy when it comes to economics, and it involves actually recently. I like the analogy, but it's I think slightly misleading as to or not completely parallel to how the current situation is. And naturally, being a human being, I feel like my opinion is important enough to have people listen to it. Mm. So the analogy or the story goes that the government is like a referee when it comes to capitalism. And their job is not to distribute points. It's not to make sure that everyone has the equal amount of points. Their job is just to make sure that everyone's playing by the rules. And that whoever wins won by their own merit, not by cheating. Now, it's a wonderful comparison, a wonderful, I guess, allegory for what capitalism should be and what it is in its purest form. But the problem with that is that a more appropriate comparison would be to say that the ref is playing in a game of, or is the referee for a game of hockey, but instead of points, for every goal they get $10,000. Well, after one team gets a pretty good lead, they say, "Oh, well, hey ref, we'll give you $5,000 if you tip the balance in our favor. If you start calling more fouls on them than you call on us." So then they start to gain a bigger lead because naturally the ref is bought off. Only they can't stop there. Once you have a bigger lead, they don't, obviously they don't want their opponent to catch up. They don't want to lose. So instead of just buying off the ref, they go and talk to the the NHL, the governing body of hockey, and they say, "Well, hey, we need you to set up the rules so that there are enough regulations and there are enough issues that it makes it harder for other people to actually compete. Set up the rules to where our team is better suited for it. Set up the rules to where it favors us completely. So even if the ref is actually following the rules completely, then this team is better off." So what you have is in the long run, you can say, "Oh, well, it's just a competition and anyone can win." But when one side rigs the entire game to favor them, it's not really fair anymore. And I think that's a much more appropriate allegory on the way our society currently works and the way our capitalism actually works. So naturally, you have multiple camps pop up that think this is a problem, and they're right. But they think of different reasons for why it's happening. And I think all of them are a little bit correct, but I think the ideas that they each have need to be put together to actually find a solution. So you have the people who say, "Oh, well, the rich people are fucking us over. The rich people are rigging the system towards their favor. They're the ones that aren't paying enough, so we have to live in these shit apartments. I can't provide for my family, so I just have to keep working. I can't pursue an education because it's too expensive." Well, that's great, and you're right. They are rigging the system, but the way that they're rigging the system is by the people that you want to fix it for you. You say, "Oh, let's get the government to fix it. Let's get the government to crack down on these rich people that are controlling everything." The problem is that the rich people are controlling the government. It's not that the government is failing to stop the oppression of you. It's that they're enabling it. They're the tool that these rich people are using. They've gained a lead, and they naturally don't want to give it up. They don't like competition. So they use the only thing that can actually change the rules to change it in their favor. So I think these people that are looking towards democratic socialism are going to be extremely disappointed. I mean, they may be happy in the short run, but in the long run, there's a reason that socialist and communist nations have failed over time, and there's a reason that America has risen to complete preeminence in the world. Preeminence, eminence, dominance, whatever. Basically, America's at the top, and that's because capitalism, competition, pure capitalism works. And there's the argument that says, oh, we need to kind of slow down competition because the environment is being destroyed because we're just taking everything that we can. But I'm going to set aside that argument for now. But rum and coke, it's good shit. But basically, capitalism in its purest form works. So I don't think that these people moving towards Bernie Sanders, no matter how pure his intentions are going to be happy with the end result, and they're not going to be better off in the long run. I think he will try his very best, but I don't think it will actually improve anything. On the other hand, you have the ones who, I'll say, I don't want to say the ones going towards Trump, because, well, yeah, let's go with them, because they seem to be at a lot of air quotes here, but they seem to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. But I don't think they actually are, because ultimately they're still saying, oh, well, we want someone to go into the government and fix everything for us. I think, once again, they're going to be extremely disappointed. The only people I think that have actually a reasonable argument to stand on, and that everyone seems to think are these selfish pieces of crap that just want the rich to get richer and keep stepping on the little guy, are the libertarians. For decades, Ron Paul has been fighting for a smaller government, a government that is staying out of pointless wars in other countries, spending less money, being less intrusive into the average American's life, and just basically being the actual unbiased referee. Make sure the rules are fair, but let people do what they need to do, and let people do what they want to do, what they choose to do. That's called freedom. The problem is that people see these ones as the rich ones. Naturally, the libertarians want everything to stay the same so that they can continue to get rich. Well, the problem is that they don't want things to stay the same. Ultimately, I believe capitalism is the economic manifestation of reality. In that if you sit there and you try to control everything, say with socialism, ultimately it will become corrupted. It will, naturally. There's no way to keep it from happening. But if you let it live, let it flourish, let competition take place, you can't control what the outcome will be. But ultimately, it will be something beautiful. And while there may be some casualties in the process, and I say casualties, that sounds very, very fucked up. I don't mean people getting trampled in the streets or in the soup kitchens or anything, or starving to death, but ultimately there will be some people that won't be as well off. There will be some unintended consequences of these actions, but it's, for instance, say if the government hadn't bailed out the big banks, there would have been a huge correction. Huge, and nobody would have liked it. And it would have been a little rough. But ultimately, I think in the long run, it would create a sustainable economy, rather than the one we have right now, which is just, well, we can talk about that another time. But yeah, basically, I think we ultimately need to, before we can handle any of these problems, need to be realistic about what the problems are. I need to be realistic about what the situation we currently find ourselves in actually is, so that we can find a solution to it. Because I think a lot of people want certain things. They want, they want the middle class to grow. They want the poor to be able to make a living wage. But they all have different ways of thinking to go about it. And they all sit here vilifying each other. Say, oh, well, they must hate poor people because they don't want the government to provide free health care for them. No, they don't. They don't hate poor people. They just know that the government isn't going to be able to provide good health care for them. But, that's just my thoughts on the subject. Probably going to delete this video anyways. So, y'all have a great night. Oh, my name's Jeff, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm that guy who posts political shit on your Facebook wall all the time. But yeah. Hope somebody got something good from this. And I hope we can actually have some decent discussions going forward about this stuff. So, thanks very much, and y'all have a great night. And it's not